Hey, here's something really interesting. You know how candidates often talk about bringing jobs back to the US, stopping outsourcing, building and manufacturing stuff here in the US? It's a really popular mantra for politicians on the left and right. And there's this question that sometimes comes up, and it really should come up because it's a good question, which is if Americans want to have stuff made here in the US, can they afford to, and would they be willing to pay more for products made in the United States? This would be a reality if manufacturing did come back to the US. If the US started making the plastic toys that we're used to getting from China, for example, they will cost more here in the US. A new Associated Press GFK poll looked at this question, and it turns out that while people really like the ideas of bringing jobs back and made in the USA, that paying more is not really something people want to do. 3 out of 4 say they would like to buy goods manufactured inside the United States, but that those items are either too expensive or too difficult to find. 9% say they only buy American. And then people were given a real world example. You can buy a $50 pair of pants made in another country, or you can buy an $85 pair of pants made in the United States. 2/3 said they would buy the cheaper pair that was made in another country. 30% said they would pay more for the more expensive American made pants. And you could see this and say, well, that's because middle class incomes are stagnant. And you know, if you look at the inflation adjusted minimum wage, people aren't really making enough money to afford that. But the results were similar among high income households. Even households, Lewis, earning over $100,000 a year were just as likely to say they would go for the lower priced foreign goods than the expensive US made products. And this is a reality.
It's a reality. Think about how many times that's all that's available to you.
Right.
How frequently are you going to a store, clothing, or whatever? You might not even be able to find any products that are made in the USA.
And the problem with the study is one of narrative, because eventually, if all the jobs go overseas, taken to its full conclusion, the real choices would be, would you want to pay $85 for pants and have a job in the US, or be able to buy $50 pants but have no job to even have the $50 because all the jobs are gone? That's sort of taken to its full conclusion. The reality is not all of our jobs are at risk of outsourcing. It's not totally realistic. The other issue is that of whether things cost more in the US only because manufacturing costs more or because of what can be charged. And we've talked about this with pharmaceutical prices, right? We have the same drugs that cost orders of magnitude more in the US than in other countries. The R&D costs were the same. The manufacturing costs are essentially the same. It's the same drug. So part of it is cost to produce in the US. Part of it is what the market is willing to bear.
And even clothing. Even the higher end clothing, it's still clothing that's made in another country most of the time. But $200, $300, $400 for a garment that in all likeliness cost them at the most $25 to make.